Breshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. Ve'haaretz hayta tohu vavohu, ve'choshech al pnei tehom ve'ruach Elohim merachefet al pnei hamayim. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was unformed and void, and darkness over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God sweeping over the water. Our Torah begins with a spoiler alert. The world was created, heaven and earth. The second verse, however, takes us behind the scenes. It was chaos and disorderly and dark and unknown. Our world is beautiful and nourishing, and was also created through complication and mess. This week's Parsha is Bamidbar, translated in English to Numbers because of the census that is taken at the beginning. However, Bamidbar means in the wilderness. We know that our people have gone from the verses I just quoted through a lot of generations to end up post-Egypt to receiving the Torah, and now figuring out their journeying with ritual and spiritual connection and building of community. So Bamidbar is the book after the Passover story, after learning all of our rules, and now onto the journey towards becoming a people. We have dealt with the self, and now we are concerned with the communal. But why do we care that all of that happened in the wilderness? The Midbar in our Torah is the fundamental space, and I would argue character, for transformation. The Midbar is the chaos and void from Genesis, and is the unknown territory that our people walk through from creation of self to creation of a people. The Midbar is a character, like Moshe, Avraham, Sarah, the talking donkey, God. The Midbar plays a role in how we categorize our existences, define our character, and ultimately organize our lives and our religion and our world. The first time we hear of the Midbar is in Breshit, Genesis 14:6, when Avraham begins his journey. A wilderness is defined as being uninhabited and uncultivated, whereas a desert is defined as, quote, large, dry area of land with sparse vegetation, often characterized by sand or rocky ground and a hot climate. A wilderness has yet to be designated as anything specific until someone or something happens within or upon it. Avraham is journeying from his land, his birthplace, and his family through the Midbar, through a vast place that is unknown, just as his journey is unknown and his mind discombobulated and his path unclear. The second time we hear the word Midbar is when Hagar and Ishmael are sent out of their home and they wander about in the wilderness with only bread, water, and each other. She is lost, unwanted by her son's father, and abandoned by the only family and home she knows. So she wanders in the wilderness, ultimately finding God and life for her son. Reuven, in Breshit 37:22, tells his brothers to cast Joseph into a pit in the wilderness, but not to hurt him. In Exodus 3:1, Umoshe haya ro'eh et son itro chotno kohen Midian, ve'inhag et son achar hamidbar, vayavo el har ha'elohim choreva. Moses, tending the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, drove the flock into the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. The wilderness is the home of the burning bush, which begins the freedom of our people and the relationship between Moshe and God. We also believe that this place, Horeb, is where we receive Torah in Sinai later on, beginning here in chapter 19 of Exodus, verse 1. B'chodesh hashlishi latzeit b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim bayom hazeh ba'u midbar Sinai. Our midbar is not just a place for journeying. It is a place of discovery, of building, of thinking, and of becoming. In Midrash Tanchuma, a rabbinic explanation and storytelling, we listen in to the rabbis expound upon a question asked about the first verse of our parsha. Why does the verse say Bamidbar, in the wilderness? Their answer, for anyone who does not make themselves hefker, ownerless, undefined, like the wilderness, they cannot acquire Torah. What does this teach us? The Midbar was essential for this next step of our people and the relationship with God that follows in this fourth book of Torah. It's not just a space. It's a place, our poets tell us, that speaks, or as I'm arguing, a character that guides and teaches us. Ha-Midbar, the wilderness, medaber, speaks. To make ourselves hefker means to make ourselves like the midbar, to be ownerless, the opposite of tidy and organized. To be hefker is to have radical openness, uncontrolled, totally vulnerable, raw and exposed, like a wilderness. So the Midrash is teaching us to become hefker in order to receive Torah, just as we received Torah in our midbar. We are each of us on our own journeys, going through our own midbar, taking different paths and turns depending on the people we encounter, the experiences we have, and the relationships that guide us. However, the journey is our own, and often we need to walk through our midbar uncomfortably to receive Torah on the other side. Some of us need to think quietly and ponder. Others of us need to talk through each detail. And maybe others need to journal or write sermons or teach classes to process. However, the midbar, the wilderness of our thoughts, allows us to live in the disorganization, the messiness, the unknown, and hear what next steps to take. I'm not someone who enjoys disorganization or chaos, but I remind myself often that our world began in that chaos. Our people were born through a wilderness that was unshaped and void. And so too, I will gain clarity through moments of tohu vavohu. Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs in The Wilderness and the Word said, when we undertake the exodus and wander into the world in order to find a new society elsewhere, we discover the world as the midbar, as the wilderness. When the world has become a wilderness, a person is at last in solitude, in which they can hear thunderingly the voice of the Spirit that with its urgent whispering has already driven and rescued her from the depths. In the wilderness, God spoke to the leader and his tribes. In the wilderness, by listening to the voice, by accepting its offer, and by submitting to its command, they had at last reached life and became the people chosen by God. Shiva is arguably the most vulnerable of our communal moments, inviting people into our private space to comfort us in our grief and our toughest times. We come into a home, and Jewish law teaches us that we say nothing until the mourner is ready to speak to us. This is uncomfortable, and honestly, most of us break this rule because of our own anxieties. Our tradition is teaching us to walk with someone through their midbar. The midbar is a character in a relationship, not a place to experience the relationship. Sitting next to someone who just needs your presence may not be comfortable for you, but may be the support that they need. Listening to someone's burdens because it makes their heart a bit lighter, even if it pains your heart to see them hurting, that's a mitzvah. Asking tough questions to help someone process through a tough experience, even if the answers are uncomfortable, that's a blessing. And just like in Shiva, when they're ready, they will share with you how you can be helpful walking through their midbar with them. Our world right now echoes of these silences in deep, painful, and profound ways. We are both individually and communally in the middle of a midbar, wandering and wondering what and if that Torah or beautiful creation is coming. However, Shavuot is tomorrow night. And it is our opportunity to both metaphorically and intentionally receive our Torah for the next year. What revelation do you need after the midbar you've traversed this year? What has your midbar spoken back to you about goals and dreams or reassurances that help with your next creation? What is the Torah you need to wander with through this next part of your journey? I want to end with words written by Rabbi Dr. Aaron Lieb Smokler from Maharat as a blessing for each of us. May we open ourselves widely, detach ourselves from those things that tether us and tame us, give ourselves over to the wilderness, the midbar, for you and I and we just might then find ourselves back at Sinai. The path to order is paved through disorder.